Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are tuning in from today. I want to welcome you back to our TechStrong Learning Experience with Harness. My name is Jared, and once again, thank you for joining our TechStrong Learning programs. A couple of quick housekeeping notes. This session is being recorded. It will be available on demand, and we will also send you a link to the recording once we conclude. We do have some handouts in the resource section on the left side of your screen. Be sure to check those out. We've also got our Developer Experience Summit coming up in May 21st, so also make sure you check on that, also in the resource section. Please be sure to use the chat on the right side of your screen. Any comments that you've got, share your experiences, share where you're tuning in from. Let us know why you're here today. Just let us know your understanding on anything. We want to hear from you. We want to engage with you, which is also where we have the Q&A panel on the right side of your screen as well. Any questions that you've got throughout the presentation, please make sure they go to the Q&A section. We want to hear any questions that you've got as well. Let's go ahead and kick off today's topic. We've got empowering developer innovation, balancing speed, security, and scale. And we're joined with Martin Reynolds, Field CTO here at Harness, and Alexander Jabala, Senior Sales Engineer at Harness as well. Martin, Alexander, I want to thank you for joining us today. Martin, if you want to go ahead and take it away from here.
Awesome. So thank you very much. We're excited to be here as always. So we're going to jump right in. And where we're going to start is we're going to start talking about kind of our kind of point of view on the world and you know why getting this right is so important. So overall there's around 30 million developers worldwide, delivering software in all sorts of organizations, and roughly based on kind of average salaries globally, that equates to around $3 trillion of investment in building software. Unfortunately, somewhere over 40% of engineers' time and developers' time is spent not doing that. It's spent, doing a bunch of other tasks that aren't solving problems and delivering new features and everything else to the customer, whether that be an internal or an external customer. And so, what does that lead to? Well, ultimately that leads to, developers being unhappy in the roles that they're doing. They're not doing the thing that they enjoy most. They're getting caught up in all sorts of other things, and it's around 43% of developers say that they're dissatisfied, and add to that really triggers kind of, poor things in terms of retention of employees, and which then adds to a whole bunch of other problems in terms of onboarding and everything else. And then when you roll into that, the fact that, organizations report that production applications have 60% of them have vulnerabilities in them. Now, that is a huge number. That does not mean those vulnerabilities have been exploited. It does mean that organizations know that those vulnerabilities exist, right? And they're there to be exploited. And those things need to be resolved, kind of creating that whole tech debt. And then the last piece of this, realistically, one of the side effects of this and the rush to get things done fast and means that there is around 28% of what people spend on their cloud resources is actually wasted spend. And, that number comes from like AWS and Google and Azure, right? Those providers know that you're spending money that you don't need to spend. So how do we, how does that kind of equate in the day-to-day of what people are doing? So, let's have a look at, what that software development cycle, really looks like. So what we've got here is I'm going to kind of run through what that software development lifecycle looks like. And what we've got at the top there is, and I do love this, is it's going to show you how those things impact on time, on cost, on, people's satisfaction / dissatisfaction, and, how that really applies across the piece. So, if you're talking about, the whole life cycle for a developer engineer joining an organization, you kind of start with that developer onboarding. And developer onboarding, it happens twice, right? Developer onboarding happens when somebody joins an organization. But it also happens when somebody moves from project A to project B, because there's, a change in where the resources are, or anything else, and, within that, there's kind of like, there's all these silos of where the information's held. There's building out the development environments, getting onto the code repos and all of that. Ultimately, once that developer onboarding is done, developers and engineers, they're going to want to actually write that code. So they write the code. That's, as somebody who coded for, too many years that I don't want to say, but definitely, more than 20 plus years of hands-on coding. That was the bit I loved. That was the bit where I got to be creative, where I got to find those great solutions. Once it was, I'd done that coding though, then all the pain started all over again. You start to get into that kind of build test, and you've got, the plethora of tools that happen. So, you have multiple different build tools potentially that you're using. You've got multiple testing tools, for security testing and code quality testing, maybe your unit testing. Then hopefully, eventually, that you end up with a build artifact, whether that's a container or an exe or a mobile application, and that artifact gets stored, and hopefully you're going to do some resilience testing of that before you kind of move on to that. How do I get that thing I built, that new feature, that bug fix? I need to release that out to the customer, and that ultimately means that, again, you need to manage infrastructure. You've probably got infrastructure as code, or, and in one or more clouds, and you're using multiple technologies to do that. You need to manage the change within those environments. You might need to do database migrations. Then you've got the actual deployment itself, which again, that can be complex. Quite often people end up babysitting those deployments, which kind of moves us into that, you've managed to get it deployed, and then you need to verify that that deployment's good, that it's happened correctly. You maybe need to monitor those metrics. Maybe something's not gone great. You need to roll back, and then kind of across all of those items. So you've already got a whole bunch of activities going on. More and more people are working in kind of regulated environments, or they have standards that they want to meet inside their organizations. That kind of leads to the governance and security side, where, you need to manage those pipelines, make sure that actually they have done all the security tests, that they're not releasing any new CVEs into the environment, that the dependencies are up to date or using the, approved versions, that, actually things for accessing the environments in terms of managing your secrets, doing the auditing of who built what, when, who tested it, how it was released. Again, all of that is coming across. And, how do you know what the impact of all these things are if you're not actually using some kind of measurements and analytics to really, drive that across the board? So you might be doing that manually. You may be trying to pull in those DORA metrics using something like, I don't know, you might be using Azure, you might be using Excel, you might be, there might be some limited reporting in the tools that you're using. And then, obviously, more often than not, that's deploying to cloud resources, whether that be public or private cloud. Those resources, cost a lot. Now, one of the things I would say is that, overall, we did a survey recently, and on average, engineers need to be up to speed with about 14 tools. 14 tools. Right, the cognitive load across this entire estate, across delivering the SDLC, is huge. So how do we do it better? What are the steps that take us from, this kind of complex, sophisticated set of tools and processes that, we have to varying degrees in our organizations? How do we get to something that's just, gives that better developer experience, and how do we design for that from the get-go? And that's really what the talk today is about, is how do you build out that great developer experience, so that you have, an absolute kind of, state of affairs in terms of how we're doing that. So that's what we're going to do. Now, right up front, right, I'm going to say that, this is a combination of, my own experience when I was still running DevOps and platform engineering teams, as well as some of, great inputs from some of our customers that we work with, in terms of how they're building up, great developer experience, So, we're going to start right with the first one at the bottom there, which is customer focus. So, it is super important to have customer focus. When you're talking about developer experience, your customers are your developers, right? They're your engineers. They're your, these are the guys, who are consuming that, and you need to be focused on that. So, I think what we're going to do here is we're going to, Alex and I are going to do a little bit of back and forth here. And, I'm going to talk about these principles, and Alex is going to, show some examples of how you can do that to get the right customer experience for the engineers. So, Alex, how can we do that? How do we have a great customer focus?
Yes, thank you, Martin. Can you all hear me? And you can see my screen still, right?
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. So as a developer, as I come in and like Martin said, changing maybe project or first time in a new team, I really want to have this place where I can get on board really quickly. And we will do that. And you see here, this is the Harness platform. And right now I'm in the internal development portal, and we do have a lot of capabilities in the platform, which we will touch upon. But now I'm starting in the internal development portal. So the place where all the services, all the resources that I would go to in order to find the right stuff. And here I can go by looking to a global searching for the information I need. I can hear some echo here. Or I can actually go right to the catalog and find in a filter way, the services, the components that are more towards me, and I can actually select this boutique front end, which is a service that I can also directly now see what is it about. I can see this the source code. I can see the tech doc. I can also see who's the owner, so who to contact if I have any questions or if I need to understand anything better. But I can also see things like the scorecards, overall maturity, if we are up to speed with the security standards. I can also see which CI/CD pipelines these services are used in. I have a feedback tab. I can even go in to see when and if any chaos experiments have been running here, the cloud cost for this service as well. So this is very much the first thing I would do in order to get to know the services, get to the right place.
That's awesome. And in fact, I love that idea that you have one place to go where you can see everything from access to your code base to how this service is running, what services depend on it. That's a great experience for the engineers. In fact, one of our customers specifically who I've worked with, we were speaking, I don't know, quite a few months back now, but they specifically called out and said, they want their engineers to only have one login. And from there, they want to be able to get to everything, right? So they want to be able to do everything from one space. And this really plays to that kind of vision of a customer focused, with the customer being the engineer or the developer or the SRE or the DevOps engineer. It gives those personas one place to start that's shared and shares that information between them and gives great visibility. So if you just switch back to the slides there for a second, that second foundational piece that is on there, and this is one that we hear again and again and again, is shared workflows. So, it's great that people want to be able to get stuff out and do it quickly, but actually having a shared managed workflow that's reusable across multiple services, really allows engineers that kind of freedom to innovate, but still doing that within some guardrails. And I know that Alex has a really neat little demo here of, how you might handle a new service creation that gives you everything from, new service all the way through to a path to production. So let's see that.
Yeah, and this is a very powerful part to the developer portal as well. I mean, spoken to a customer, or we have helped a customer not too long ago, where they said they needed over 160 ticket requests in order to get their developers onboarded and to start working on the first or getting the first PR through. And so what we can do here with the workflows as a platform engineer, you'll be able to set up these services, and they can be different templates and similar. But what this services would actually do is run the pipelines that Harness would provide in order to set up everything up, but also to automate that whole onboarding process of the services. So here I went into the workflows. I can see some of the services here, and I can, for instance, if I want to now go and create a Python Lambda app here, I can just go into this service here, and then I will be presented with a form. I will need to give it a name. So in this case, I will give it my name, AJ service. And then I proceed, and now I will have to choose where I want to deploy it, and I can select GCP or AWS in this case. So GCP, and I will also give it an owner. And in this case, yeah, I'm a sales engineer. I will give it the sales engineer. And from here, we can also have the approvals and everything from there. And just by reviewing this, everything looks good. I can create this to start triggering off the pipeline. And what this will actually do now is to automate everything, give me the right access that I have in order to start working with the service that I need.
And that's creating everything, right? From a pre-designed, secure by design, scaffolded repo, and all the pipelines that are attached to it, as well as that. So it's kind of giving them that, hey, here's my repo I can check out, and as soon as I do my first merge or pull request, that's going to kick off that pipeline. So what does that pipeline look like? Can you show me what one of those pipelines looks like? And before we'll switch back to the slides in a minute, but I'll tie it back together. But I'm kind of excited to see what that pipeline looks like that's been created, and maybe some of the things that are in there that what's in that created pipeline.
Yeah, for sure. And I already executed this, so I have the pipeline already created here, and here you can see what's coming from that workflow service that we just kicked off. So everything you can see here from left to right, we have different stages, and we're starting with a build stage. Within each stage, you can also have some execution steps, as I will go into as well in more detail later. And in this case, you have a build stage, you have an infrastructure stage, you have some deployment stages, you even have an approval stage, and a feature flag and experimentation stage. And there are some things that are really neat, because you see here that you can run things in this sequential order, and you can create this pipeline in sequential order. But I can also start doing things in parallel if I would to just build this. And everything you can do here, if I want to extend this, it can be done in a visual editor. Just to show you here, or I can do it as code with my YAML editor as well. So everything will be translated back and forward, which really invites all kinds of user into the platform as well. And I can even leverage our AI in order to create and enhance this pipeline if I would like to do so.
Okay, so sorry, if you just switch back to the slides a minute. So what we have here is this kind of shared workflow, and it really plays to that principle of having those paved paths to production, right? The golden pathways, whatever phrase you use in your organization. I've heard them called landing zones, but it's really that kind of like, hey, there's nothing wrong with being opinionated, and that doesn't block innovation, but it does allow for consistency and security and those things too. So one of the things that that we constantly hear about when we're talking about building great DevX is having that kind of unified tool chain, right? So we want the tool chain to be completely unified. You heard me mention the 14 plus tools on average for an engineer to use. So, one of the things that I know we do, and I think there's probably a few places in that pipeline where you can show this, is, we will integrate with the tools, where they are, whether that be like Jira or ServiceNow or the security testing tools. So, how do we do that, and what does that look like?
Yeah, and that's a very powerful thing. So if we start by looking within the build stage here, and we go through the execution step, you see that we do a lot of things. So for instance, we integrate with security scanners such as Black Duck and Snyk. And we do, this is something we are providing the connector. We have an SLA on this. We also do some ASBOOM generation as well, which you can leverage our, or you can bring in your own, which we'll probably go into as well in the later step. But what we also do with things like Jira and ServiceNow is that we have their first-class citizens, or we have first-class support for both Jira and ServiceNow, and we can actually start by creating the tickets right from the pipeline. So you don't need to go back and forward between ServiceNow or Jira, and you can even pull in custom fields, but also the fields that you need out of the box in order to support all of this. So to automate that whole process of change management, which is what a lot of organizations are looking to do now as well.
Okay, awesome. So if you switch back to those slides again, let's have a look at those pillars. And you heard me mention it before, that thing about having freedom with guardrails, right? We want people to be able to innovate, but there's certain things that you want people to happen as part of an organization, right? Because that's just part of your governance and compliance, right? You must have these security scans. But what happens if I really want to get this product feature out? I'm really keen, and so but it keeps failing a security test. What happens when I do that?
That's a very good question, and a very valid question. So what we do here with Harness is we work with something called Open Policy Agent Engine, and that's policy as code, and it's very powerful. It will kind of give you, if you think about when you drive a car, it will give you a green, an orange, or a red light, depending on if you can go, or if you should brake, or if you stopped. And in this scenario you just mentioned, where maybe you have a DevOps cowboy like myself, and I say, like, yeah, I know what I've developed, I know what I want to push through, and it's all good. I don't need this Wiz scanner, for instance, and I delete it, and then I'm gonna try to save this so they later run it because I asked my best friend. He's like, yeah, that's fine. And if I now try to do this, what Harness will do and the Open Policy Engine will do is go in and evaluate and see, no, you're not actually allowed to do that because you need to have the Wiz scanner before. So it will not just only block me, it will also tell me why I'm blocked and not able to proceed.
Yeah, so applying that governance. But, the great thing about this is it's providing you the right information and in context. But, this principle applies generally, on the flip side. And, equally, if there's something that you want to do that's extra or that's specific to your stack, you can absolutely be able to add those in. We don't want to stifle innovation, but we do want to be able to make sure that the key tenets of an organization sets around its security policy or its auditing policy or approvals policy are all adhered to. So if we switch back to that slide deck now, so we've got that kind of customer foundation, we've got the concept of shared workflows, got that unified tool chain. So even where we're integrating tightly, we've got that freedom to innovate, but we have guardrails to make sure that we're complying, whether we're in a regulated environment or just with the organizational standards. So, let's take that compliance piece a little bit further and talk about that kind of embedded security piece, because, most organizations have more than one security tool. And what you end up seeing as an engineer is, do you know what? I've got 100 vulnerabilities in tool A, and you know what? In SonarQube Scan, I've got 150 vulnerabilities over there, and then Wiz scanned over here. And do you know what? I've got a other bunch of vulnerabilities. But what I need as an engineer is, you know, as a developer, you know, if I want to have a great experience, I want to know that those scans have happened, but I just want to see the things I need to fix. So, you know, how do we do that, Alex?
Yeah, and that's the big thing, and I will actually do that by going to an executed version of the pipeline, and so you can see that this is the pipeline in executed version. And as you mentioned, like in many cases, you have multiple security scanners, as you can see here, we're using Black Duck, Snyk, and it's very important to do that, you know, shift left of security, but you don't want to give them more burden. As a developer, I know it's important. I love the freedom. I love to do to innovate, but I'm always afraid of introducing new issues. So I understand the security scanner is really valuable, but what I also think is it's quite hard to understand the results from all of this. So what Harness will do with the security scanners is we will look at the result, we deduplicate or normalize it, deduplicate them, and also prioritize them to what is most important for me as a developer. So if I now go to this security test tab here, I will not only see the different version of, or the different criticalities of the vulnerabilities, but also the ones that I have added. So they will be all prioritized to me. And I can then also go in more detail to them to understand what is it. I also have AI to help me understand it even better.
Yeah. That's perfect. And what it's really giving you is that kind of view of, this is what I need to deal with, or this is what I must deal with. And you know what, it's in context of you know, the change that you've made, and you know what the change is that needs to be done to resolve it, you know. So it's really doing that. And the other thing I would call out is, you know, again, this integration, I'm pretty sure that, like, if there's no fix, you can ask for an exception, right? That's entirely possible.
Yeah, you're completely right. Let's say it could be that I'm depending on some sort of library or something that I'm not in control of, but we need it, and there's no fix. And that's how it is sometimes. What I can actually do then, I can actually request an exemption, and I can set that exemption to be on this target, but also on the pipeline or the whole project. In this case, maybe it wouldn't be the pipeline. I can also specify for how long, and I know that's going to be fixed in the next 7 days. And the reason for this is because there's no fix available, and this will be sorted in 7 days or something. Like, I give a feedback, and from there I can actually create this request, and yeah, to wait for someone to actually be able to approve this with the right access or reject it for me.
Which is perfect. And again, it's that kind of integration into the tooling, and, you know, making a easier direct connection with the security team who can kind of make a decision on that, you know, and adding to that flow, and again, making it easier for the engineers to get the right information at the right time. So let's roll back to our little fantastic diagram building here of building a great DevX experience. So we've got these principles that we're coming across, and this last one here is metrics. And in fact, the very first time I did this presentation was actually with one of our customers, and Booking.com, and they said one metrics isn't enough. They said that should be metrics, because how do you know that you're making the right choices, that you have the right balance of governance and compliance, as well as, you know, freedom, that you're getting the right experience, and that you're actually seeing improvements along the way? Well, the way you do that is having metrics, and those metrics are kind of key or critical to, you know, understanding that developer experience and understanding that you're architecting out the right solution for your engineers, and you're making progress and improvements in the areas that you want to. So, you know, can you show us like some of those metrics and what those look like?
Yes, I'm happy to do so. So with Harness and what we do is we, with all the different systems and tools that you use, we were able to pull that data in order to then present metrics such as DORA metrics, but also flow metrics for you to be able to find the different bottlenecks and measure times like mean time to recovery and lead time to change that you see here. So what I'm presenting with here is this insight dashboard, and in this case it is for a specific team where I can actually look into how long it actually takes for something to be in a change. And I can go into this in more detail, and then I can see really quickly here where the bottlenecks are. So we have classified the different steps, and you can see that here we have something ready for dev, which is classified slow. And if I need to, I can then drill even deeper down into this metrics in order to find like what can I actually do in order to improve the whole lead time to change in my environment, in my department environment, in my teams. I can even look at other things as if I want to go to flow metrics, look into that, have a deeper understanding, and create new sort of KPIs and visualizations to support and make my organization more efficient.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So if we just drop back to the slide, we've kind of talked about the foundational pieces of customer focus and shared workflows or target landing zone or golden pathways, the benefits of unifying that tool chain, which doesn't necessarily mean only having one tool. What it means is ensuring that those tools are integrated easily and tightly with each other so that the actual cognitive load of consuming the data out of them is less, making it easier for those engineers, as you saw in the demo, going across, multiple security scanners happening, but one place to view it and one place to be able to action and remediate those makes it a simpler experience and a lower cognitive load for the engineer to be able to constantly not have to context switch. We talked about having that freedom with guardrails, and especially if you're in regulated environments, and it feels like everybody is in a regulated environment these days. If I'm honest, to some degree, making sure that people can still innovate, but those key things, those key guardrails are, absolutely delivered alongside that. And we've seen about embedded security and compliance. We've seen about metrics. And so I want to just talk on this last thing, leadership support. So great developer experience really comes when it's pushed from below and above, and it has to be something that is planned overall, and invested in, right? So if you want to have a great developer experience and have happy developers who are building great solutions for your end users, you need to have that that groundswell to engage with what you're doing, whether that's getting inputs into the shared workflows or working out what that right balance of freedom and compliance is, and working that out. But you also need that sponsorship from above. You need the leadership of the business and the organization to also believe that this is going to get the right outcomes for the business. And that's really where the metrics plays both ways, right? The metrics helps, engineers on a day-to-day basis improve, but also it helps you explain up, and get management buy-in. So, if we look at this as a kind of summary of everything that we've been talking about, there is a, and I know I'm repeating myself a little, but honestly, I've seen this time and time again, and this is really what works. We know this works, and we've seen it in multiples of our customers, that unified tool chain, and the power of the integrated platform. It's, having that fully integrated platform, whether it's delivered in, in Harness or whether it's delivered in, whatever set of tools that you're making sense, that principle still makes sense, reducing that cognitive load, but having that power of that integrated platform is a game changer. Next, we have that freedom with guardrails. So, yes, I want to be able to add new things in, maybe use some new technologies, but actually that path to production, those secure by design environments that have the right, the right steps, and essentially just making it easy for engineers to do the right thing and hard for them to do the wrong thing. Everybody likes the easy path, so make it easy for people to do the right thing, to meet those right compliance, to have the right levels of auditing, to get those right approvals. That's exactly the right way to do it. And then next we have the metrics, right? If you can't measure, where you are and what those trends are and where you're improving and where, how can you share, good practice between teams? You need that visibility at all levels. You need it, within engineering teams and product and service teams, but you need it for engineering managers, and you need it for business leadership so that they can translate what those good practices are driving at the other end. In fact, we had one specific customer, one of the largest banks in the US, and they actually came to a conference, and they were talking about metrics and visibility, and they measure their internal developer experience. The success of their internal developer experience is measured by improvements in their external facing NPS scores. So their net promoter scores of the services and products that they have, their digital services, they felt they could directly correlate that to, having good engineering practices within the organization, and those two things tie together. And I love that kind of connection, because do you know what? Happy engineers and happy developers, they make the best solutions. And that is ultimately going to drive, great, a great experience for your end users, right? Because they're building the right things and they're focusing on the right things and they're doing it to the best of their ability. I think finally, we've talked about it. So, security and compliance is critical, but it is definitely, and you heard Alex say it is genuinely about shifting the information left and not the work, right? You don't want them to have to do that deduping. You don't want them to have to work out what the thing is that they need to fix. They just need to know, in context at the right time, what is the thing that I need to fix to let me progress to the next level. Also, using policy as code to do that. Alex did a great kind of example of using open policy agents to do that, to ensure that compliance. And, the benefit of having that security, that policy, as code, means that it's almost self-documenting. You've got a set of known policies that, engineers can see. And do you know what? Guess what? Those can be documented inside that IDP. So you get that kind of real consistency across the piece. And then I think finally, the one thing I would say is, before I mention this last thing, Alex, is there anything you want to add? Because I feel like I've been hogging the mic here a little bit. You did all the hard work. I just did the talking. So is there anything you want to add before I mention our DevOps modernization side?
No, not really. I mean, we speak a lot to different customers. We meet a lot of developers, and when they look at something like Harness, they're usually quite impressed, and especially like incorporate all kinds of different users. If you're in the starting of your career, but more, even if you're more one of the advanced ones, you will be able to get great benefits from it. And it's like you say, everything from unified tool chains to security and compliance. That's something we hear very commonly, and it's very on top of mind when it comes to everyone within the whole software delivery life cycle. And if there's any questions or after this, we're happy to answer them. I think you have our emails as well. So yeah.
Yeah, if you could just go to that, thank you. If you go to the handouts, there's a link to the Developer Experience Summit, which happened on May 21st. I will call out, we have some amazing speakers at that event, including Capital One, Cisco. I'm trying to remember them all now, but there is a whole raft of great speakers. Atlassian, we have Google, we have Lloyd's Banking Group. So, the new stack is there. It's going to be a great, it's free online. Just sign up and you can either watch it when it airs or watch it on demand afterwards. We also have a few case studies that are linked in there around kind of, where people have adopted some of these patterns and practices and how it's impacted them and the success that they have. And I think with that, if there's no questions, then I guess I can hand back to Jared just to wrap things up.
All right. Yep. And thank you, Martin and Alex. I want to also thank everyone for joining us for today's session. Before we close out, I do want to remind everyone that this program is recorded. You will receive an email in your inbox shortly after we conclude. We also have a survey in the resource section through the handouts. If you guys can give your input, let us know your feedback, anything that you want to share with us. Your input is invaluable to us. That would help us through our future programs. It helps out Harness. It helps out Alex and Martin. Once again, thank you for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you all on our next TechStrong Learning program. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.